And hello, everybody. It's good to see so many faces I know and so many faces I don't know also, all in the little rectangles. So I thought that we could meditate on something that I found out recently that Assagioli talked about, and that is the second awakening. Because we wake up in the morning, I know it's evening for most of you, but we wake up in the morning and then we go about our usual business and we forget who we are. And the second awakening is to awake a second time to what we truly are, not just the person that's going around and doing the usual business and paying the bills and doing all the necessary things that need to be done, but also something else very different and much vaster. So I would ask you to, we will be short, I would ask you to close your eyes. And breathing is always such a great way to start and to return to ourselves. So let's breathe deeply and slowly. And let us remind ourselves of the various ways in which we wake up a second time. We wake up and remember that we are a self. Maybe meditating, maybe listening to music, maybe being with our children, or in many different other ways. But let's remember them all, maybe reading a poem, maybe going out for a walk in nature, or remembering a person that is not there anymore. Let's think of all the different ways in which we wake up a second time. It's so easy to forget, but not too difficult to remember. So let us remember now, let us remind ourselves of who we are, of how much love we are capable. Of our intelligence, our multiple intelligence, our intuition, our creativity. Let us remind ourselves of our qualities, our humanness, our sense of humor, our inner beauty, whatever that may be. Let us wake up. Let's remember we are connected right now with many other people who have woken up as well with us. So we're all awake here. We're all together. And we can open our eyes and follow our program. Good. Eric and Kim, we can go ahead whenever
Thank
you want.
you, Piero. Thank you. Very beautiful meditation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, Tom, you were going to start.
Yeah, I can. Although I must say, I love that meditation, Piero. Wonderful.
Thank
Almost
you.
like we're at the end as well as the beginning. But one of the topics that we talked about when we last met was just living with uncertainty. How do we stay connected to ourselves, our true self, in the midst of uncertainty, the unknown, so forth? And this is basic a basic challenge that psychosynthesis can be very useful in helping with. Um, and as I was thinking about that, I had this for myself. The world now has become much more uncertain than it was before, and so the challenge is greater for that practice. And I was with a group of Europeans and Russians and a few Americans yesterday, and one of the Russians who was living under Putin's regime said people here have lost the sense of the future. There's no future, and they're deeply disoriented, as well as afraid, silenced, all the other things. But the sense of expectation of a future is gone, and that was powerful and sobering to hear. And I think in this country now, which is so chaotic, uh, some of that's happening. I would say we're fighting for the future, and there's a strong resistance movement here, but it's very uncertain what the United States will become as a country. And obviously that's having world impact. So we talked about maybe starting just there with each of us speaking a bit about how we manage that. And I was thinking one of the things I do, I meditate and I disidentify and all those things, but one of the things that works best for me is to sing. And I remember a friend when we were horseback riding once saying, if you begin to get nervous on the horse, sing, because you can't be anxious and sing at the same time. And I find that I'm not only listening to music, but I'm singing more at these times when the world is overwhelming to me and I lose touch with who I am, but also where I'm going, what has meaning, kind of overwhelming depression and inertia come over me. And I find that singing is a good antidote to that. So that's my first thought. And we're each going to speak to this. And then we're really just going to see where the conversation goes. We don't have a plan. We're here, we're present and with you, and very glad to be.
Right. Well, I can follow on from you, Tom. That's okay. Thank you for your sharing. My wish for tonight is that we all come to speak about this existential moment collectively and individually. And we've agreed that we don't want to, we want to share experiences that we're having. And I particularly am very interested in young people. As many of you know, I practice social psychosynthesis with adolescents, and I'm interested in how they are dealing with this existential moment. And I think that they are watching us, we older ones who have agency and power, that they're watching us to see how we embrace the chaos and the unknowing and the uncertainty and the fear that so many people are experiencing. And I think it was you, Piero, that said, if we're going to talk about darkness, we have to say what we're going to do about it. I think you said that last time we spoke. And this is something that Assagioli would celebrate, to embrace darkness and light in the same moment. And that's my experience right now of the world. I can move from total despair and depression and uncertainty, and then I can move to optimism and hope and recognizing the preciousness of everything that's happening. So what you said, Tom, as big the chaos, as big the potential. It feels very true for me right now. And what's important to me is to say it's okay to be with the darkness, and it's okay to be confused, and it's okay to live with unknowing and uncertainty. That's the most important thing to me. But I'll stop talking so my esteemed colleagues can come in as well. Piero or Andrea?
Yes, I was thinking that in a sense is not about lack of expectation, like Tom was saying. It's worse. There is a pessimistic expectation about the future. As we told even in the past, it's already two generations that are living a more difficult life than their parents. Two generations. It has not been like that for centuries, but now it's already 50 years that every generation has less hope. And I work with different kind of people, but staying with people around their 20s, they have really this sense of, many of them, they have this sense of objective trouble coming. Climate, economical possibilities, what kind of work did you adults did you make for us, and so on. So it's not about lack of expectation or expectation of a worse future. And under many indication, it is like that. Because, for instance, economically, I speak for Italy. Economically, the possibilities of the people are much less than 20 years ago, 20, 25 years ago. What I see in the therapy room is a sort of denial of the collective, which is already impacting a lot, but it's like not really seen. So when I suggest that we enter in some existential consideration about the collective, It's like opening the door to this sense of uncertainty. We were speaking of anxiety. And Diana, last time when we were talking, the four of us, and preparing this first meeting, I was touched when you said, after such an intense spiritual, psycho-spiritual work on myself, I still meet moment of darkness. And now it's coming again, knowing what we are saying. But it's darkness inside, darkness outside. And the model that we have of a self untouched by this is not fully convincing for me. I'm becoming heretical about that. And I have more the sense that it's like consciousness surfing on the moment of life. That's the self for me. Consciousness surfing, and not as a diamond untouched by what is happening outside. It's a sort of let's say, very simple way to put it, reassuring, but it's like the soul is never touched. Why? Why is never touched? I don't think so. I don't think so. So now you can put me out of the psychosynthesis community. But let's see. Another interesting point, the four of us, we are in the last part of our life. So we have a different perspective of other people. And it's very interesting to be aware of the fact that every generation look at the collective from a different angles. But our angles, it's very interesting, not only for us, but because there is a lot of detachment from the external, in a sense. And the time is very precious because it's not such a long time. So it becomes extremely precious and interesting, I must say.
Piero, thank you, Andrea.
Well. I would have to say a lot about what Andrea just said, but I'll say it later. First, I will stick to what was asked, and I suppose my way of dealing with difficulty and uncertainty was, first of all, to realize uncertainty is our daily bread. We would be out of a job if there was no uncertainty. And it has been so since time immemorial. And my way is, if I'm aware of any need around, and I try and fulfill the need, if I serve as much as I am able to serve, at that moment I have forgotten all my anguish. I too have difficulties in reading the newspaper. I still read the newspaper, but I find it more difficult, and I skip it. However, I was also reminded recently that every generation, you can find this, it's documented, every generation says we live in times of decadence, times things are not the way they used to be, which happens to be our youth. And people have been saying this for 10,000 years. Because one of the things that happens is that we are hypnotized by the media, all media, that has a strong emphasis on evil, on catastrophe, on all the terrible things that are happening. And while the good things are much harder to see, and they are there. They are there, and even in the people that surround us, they are all around us, and they're happening. I don't know if we live in worse time or in better times. That's a very debatable question. And last thing, yes, I don't quite agree with Andrea. I do think that there is a place in us that is untouched by the flow of events, inner and outer events. And you're right, Andrea, to say it's a very simple solution. It's the simplest solution. Not simplistic, though. And I don't think it's easy to perceive that place. I think we have all perceived it, though, at times. And then, of course, we're human and we forget it and we lose it. But we are here to regain it.
Well, I want to say something, Piero, because I'm very busy at the moment, wondering, questioning, what would it be like to be self-identified? You know, when I do the disidentification meditation and I go to self-identification, how do I know that that's where I am? And what would it truly be the experience of being soul identified be like? And I haven't been able to answer that. I can only move in that direction.
Well, but you've taught that for 50 years with
I know.
with your being, with the way you are.
Yes, of course.
If you know, and that is it. We are there, but then we forget it.
Absolutely. But I think that in the early years, for all of us, we had spiritual awakenings and visions and inspiration. And that was like a carrot that brought us into this work. But at a certain point, and I've observed this in myself and people I work with, the carrot is eaten. And we've tasted something sublime and beautiful, and we dedicate our lives to it, and then the hard work begins. Then the true embracing of this existential moment really, from my experience, hits me like a truck.
Mm.
I saw a couple people, my colleagues, nodding about that.
Well, I have the sense I Thich Nhat Hanh. We all knew Thich Nhat Hanh, and I said that we are all Buddha, but part-time, no, part-time Buddha, which is very real. It's not only witty; it's real. It's the fact to get in touch with the bigger around. And this, to me, in this moment of history, it means to enlarge the void, enlarging the dotted lines, and no, including so much more than it happens habitually in the normal psychosynthesis, let's say. And then the question, is the self is solid. It means, it seems to me, Piero, a little bit like the question of the two theories about light, quantum theory and wave theory, explaining different phenomena, and they're both true in their specific phenomena. So it's you, Piero. I remember a story you used to say sometimes about this judge with the son in the court, and they listen to the reason of one guy, and they say, and the judge say to the son, "I think it's right." Then the opponent speaks, and the judge say to the son, "I think it's right." And the son says, but they cannot be right both. And he says, "You're right." No, it's a little like that. I don't know if I said well the story, but it's a little like that. And I think that to try to box in a concept is the disease of the mind. And it has effect because the most evident effects we have in our normal life, reading the newspaper, them, the Palestinians, the Israelis, etc., 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 etc. The them attitude is a disease of the mind. And I think that it's so important to work, especially now, with children. Then, Piero, the fact it's true, every generation, every old generation speaks of the old good times, but here there are facts. Economy, coming back of war after 80 years of peace in Europe, those are facts. It's not a perception of the old guy.
The thing
Tom.
well, I was just thinking about this experience of being untouched, and Piero saying that there is a place in us that we forget and that we're untouched. I think about my own experience, and it's tied in a little bit with what Andrea is saying. At those few moments where I have experienced that place, I feel also very in touch with everything. In other words, I have this sense that I can embrace whether it's the dark and light, whether it's the positive or negative, whatever. Or Andrea, what you're saying about the boundaries of the egg expanding, that I am able to embrace the collective, but I'm also in this place of untouchedness. So I don't know if that's a paradox or something, but in my experience, those few moments when I have touched that, everything is there. And actually, everything becomes incredibly precious, every detail. So in a sense, there's no disidentification. It's that degree of disidentification brings me closer to life. And I'm further from life or from my own vitality when I'm identified. So it's so interesting that those two things simultaneously existing of being untouchable and deeply touched at the same time. That's been my experience. And yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So for me, you're reframing darkness, Tom, because the experience you're describing is that we can embrace wholly what is, but it's reframed that in the darkness, as Assagioli always pushed, is the light. And what I love about psychosynthesis is how the reframing of pathology, that we see the chaos, the uncertainty, and we work with that and reframe it as an opportunity. And I think from that place that you're describing, which probably many of us have experienced, that's the place where we can do that from.
Mhm.
I'm remembering Assagioli once sticking a photograph of the universe right in my face, right up to my face, saying, "How dare you think that you can only embrace the light?" And that was one of his biggest teachings to me.
Yeah, and just to go to the situation in this country now, there's tremendously horrible things happening. And there's this tremendous response among the American people of speaking out, resistance growing. So both these movements in this country are happening at the same time. It's not an either or. One is in relationship to the other. And it's so important for me to, and I guess what we're saying is, see that from this place so that I can continue to support the birth while opposing the death.
Mm.
From the same place, because they are in this. I don't know how to say it. They are in the same place. They're happening at the same time. They are each of the other. And the sad thing is, to me, that there has to be so much suffering, so much pain, so much unconsciousness in order for awakening to happen. To me, that's the laws. And we got it, though. We have a country that has many places of deep unconsciousness that have to be brought to light.
Yeah, and I think those of us that work with young people see that young people are doing both. They're living what is, and especially those more disadvantaged or with adverse childhood experiences, they're living the darkness and they're able to move forward in the most astonishing ways.
Beautiful. Or we can learn from them.
Oh, I'll say, Piero, what have you got to say about all this?
I got to say that I just came from California, where I'm sorry I didn't meet you, but you were several hours away from me.
I
But
know.
I met, for the first time, I met my first grandchild, and he didn't seem to be
Wow.
worried. Maybe because he's just 3 months and a half, 4 months now. He was smiling, and of course, I asked myself, what kind of world have we created? Where is he going to live, and so on and so on? Then I realized more and more than a prediction is not a very um, a very good job. People, we are all very different, very bad at predicting what the future is. In fact, we should make a history of predictions. And most of the predictions I've read by experts were wrong. And the future has always surprised me in a bad way or in a good way.
Mm.
And so it may sound obvious, but I think we're in for many surprises. I hope some of them will be good. And I also think that our brand psychosynthesis gives us many good instruments to deal with the here and now. And the people that just spoke are an example. We the tool of reflection, the tool of meditation, of self-identification, service, relation with others, remembering our values. These are incredibly beautiful instruments. They won't create miracles, but I'm sure to say that they're quite helpful, and I've seen them working. So I think that we have a big task because we have useful instruments in our hands. And we can go about and share them without too much optimism. I remember in the 70s, there used to be the J theory. I don't know if you remember that. The J theory is that we, as people become more and more aware, awareness creates more awareness. Growth creates more worth. Growth, and you just jump to the heights and never come back. And that was another prediction that didn't quite work as it should have. But I still believe if we are realistic, we are privileged and we have wonderful tools at our disposal.
Well, if I can add to that, because I live in an eco-village and spiritual community in Scotland, and what I see in our community is exactly what we're talking about now. It's no different than the rest of the world. There are the same issues and the same challenges, even though, quote, we're a spiritual community. So, and I actually find that very heartening because we're all in this together and there's no escaping existential reality. We can only embrace it. Why are you laughing, Andrea?
I think of the history of psychosynthesis institutions.
Oops.
What happened, and I stick to Italy, what happened after the death of Assagioli, it was really all this personality spreading and fighting, and Piero became an outcast for a while, and me too, and it was so human, no, really so human. The difference, if you want to find something, is that little disidentification, that leave the drama and look at the drama at the same time. No, Samsara and Nirvana, they are the same thing. No, so I must say I was not surprised. Devotional types were very surprised and very disappointed. But I have not that typology. So it's more harmony through the conflict. So in a sense, it was interesting. But I totally agree about the power of those tools. Because we have experimented that with thousands of people for 50 years and more, no? Isn't that? For at least many of us. And we have seen, but sometimes I think it's really like the people who bring the torch for the Olympics, no? I don't remember the name. You pass to another one. You have done 10 kilometers, you pass another, and you never see the end. And the one who really light the fire has not seen where it's coming from, that from which will arrive in Los Angeles, no? But it's so many. I see us like water people, no, bringing water and sharing the water, and it's fine. It's fine because it has. I remember, Piero, that somebody told us that we were going to be enlightened in 1975. You remember? Well,
yes, also 2025.
Also 2025. We missed So let's, I think it's gone, this possibility. No, I was impressed by fact, by coincidence. In your the meditation, you spoke about awakening, no? And in the passage of the year in which I was in the community of Poggio del Fuoco, Città della Pieve, spiritual community, quite rooted in psychosynthesis at the origin. And in the last night of the year, we picked up angel card, no, from Pina, and I got awakening. And I was thinking, what does it mean, awakening, in this moment? What does it mean? And the sense that came to me, it was not about getting, it was about staying alert, staying present, staying alert, like in this right moment, you know? So it's not even a question of optimistic, pessimistic. It's just the way it is, and we don't know. I was thinking before that probably, I don't know if they had some form of intelligence, dinosaurs, no? They had such big bodies, and they were different kinds, and they didn't expect to disappear, no? They had no plan to disappear. What about us? Are we really sure that we are not going to disappear in some other form of consciousness? And what this thought bring to me? Being alert and work every day.
You know, I was thinking what Piero said about the 70s and also tying Andrea with what you're saying about art disappearing. I want to sing the praises of the 70s because when we started teaching people in 1972 or 70, whatever, they didn't know how to disidentify. It wasn't in the culture. And even 5 years later, the culture had changed and people came to introductory workshops already knowing how to disidentify. And my sense is that one of the beauties of psychosynthesis is it's able to offer many different things. And in the 70s and 80s, it offered transcendence. And then, as Diana said earlier, that began to wear thin. And there was a shift to what I term as descendance, incarnation, the use of the will, doing the hard work that Diana was talking about. And now I think there's another shift to the global context for psychosynthesis. And the beauty of those tools is I think they can be used in all three places, but the culture of psychosynthesis has changed dramatically. The other thing I would say, and I've been a proponent of this, I think there's a shift from the intellectual to the experiential, and that psychosynthesis now needs to be a process. What Andre just said about being in the here and now, it needs to be a process psychology. It cannot, or it can, of course, have a big, large intellectual framework, but people don't need that framework. They need the actual experience of change in their bodies and feelings and mind, guided by the soul. And, all of us have been here for 50 years watching that change. Dramatic. It's still psychosynthesis. And we may disappear, but there will be psychosynthesis who interpret and use those tools in ways that are appropriate to whatever is coming next. And a lot of them on the screen right here. So I love the 70s. It was excessive, but it was wonderful. And it was necessary because, at least in America, there was very little transcendence within psychology. There was just behaviorism and psychoanalysis. That was it.
So I'm interested in what we're talking about, years and years and years of psychospiritual work. And if I think of the plasticity of the brain and creating new neural pathways, is that what we've been doing all these years? You know, so many people in the Zoom as well, I'm sure, have just been crafting away at their psychospiritual journey. And that has an impact. That has an impact. And that impact is not just the instruments of psychosynthesis, it's more the context of psychosynthesis that we live and move and have our being from now. Or at least that's my experience. That it's okay. It's okay to have the darkness, the chaos, the uncertainty, and the drama. It's how we embrace that that matters in today's world.
Yeah.
You know, Tom, when you said that people were coming after a few years, people were coming to the workshops and were already knowing how to disidentify. It's true. What the work that we've done, we and many other people have done, has had some effects, and what we talk about is mainstream. You can find many, many people saying exactly the same things that we say,
right,
without quoting us, and which is fully their right. And so sometimes some of us have a sense of panic. But now that everybody's saying what we were saying 50 years ago, what are we going to say next? That's some kind of problem, which I talked about with Assagioli once, and I said, well, but if I keep repeating, I don't like to have to go out in the world and repeat the same things that you say, just as if I were a machine just going out. And I hated the idea of going around and converting people. And his answer was, but you won't just be repeating as a machine. Whatever you will be saying, even if it is old, even if it is very old, it is timeless, and it is creative, and it is new. And if you put your soul in it, it is transmitted, and it's yours, and it is creative.
beautiful.
So don't worry about it.
Beautiful.
And I stopped worrying.
Yeah, beautiful.
I think he's right, because we're not really talking about psychosynthesis here. Psychosynthesis to me is a set of universal principles, and I find them in many different other teachings, but it's the way Assagioli put it all together that is we call psychosynthesis. But let's not pretend that we have anything that is unusual or not found elsewhere in what we call psychosynthesis. And I love that. That's what makes me able to stay with it all these eons and eons of years.
Well, even the roots of psychosynthesis are so based Assagioli was always saying, me too, whatever you were, I am a socialist, me too, and I am, and there was this playing, but obviously there is the Hebraism, obviously there is Hinduism very much, but for me, for instance, all the practice of awareness coming from Vipassana tradition, they are disidentification and self-identification, and that's why I always meet people attracted from psychosynthesis that comes from those background, and the other way as well. So in this sense, really, there is nothing new. It's the putting together in a form. I think that Assagioli would be absolutely delighted by neuroscience,
Big time.
confirming all the intuition. But those intuitions, they were coming from experience. I think I told already once that the Dalai Lama receiving an honoris causa degree from the University of Pisa said with a nice mind, said to the professors, Western psychology, kindergarten, and which was a slap in the face of the faculty of psychology, but it was absolutely true for me, in the sense that this observation of consciousness, observation of mind. We do a mistake. We speak a lot of disidentification as less of the self-identification, no, completing. That's sometimes it's a big mistake, and it's taken from like a sort of schizoid attitude, no, of trying to sedate the feelings, not to be invaded too much. But I think that, for instance, the work that you have done for decades now in social psychosynthesis is what has to happen. I repeat always the same thing. We have to go out of the buildings of psychosynthesis and go in the street, in the prison, in the schools, in other cultures, you know, and that's still missing. That's still missing for me.
You're absolutely right.
You know,
And
okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead.
No,
Okay.
you go ahead.
All right. Well, okay. I was at a conference here this summer, and there were, I guess, 150, 200 people there. And it was in psychosynthesis. It was a summit, and Petra came and talked, and Ken Sorensen, and there were lots of people. But the thing that was so wonderful, and they asked me to just give a history of psychosynthesis in the first half hour, and I stood up there and I was overwhelmed. And I said, "You don't have to worry about it, but I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to say." And I just stayed with that. And then I realized I was overwhelmed by the fact that there were so many young people in the crowd. There were probably of the 160, there were probably 60 or 70 young people in their 20s and 30s, because there are a couple of institutes that have taught younger people. And it was marvelous. It was a marvelous conference. And these young people are continuing to work. And one thing they've organized is a working group for people under 40. So they can really play in psychosynthesis. And I think it's also important you can say psychosynthesis is timeless, universal, and so forth. And it needs to change. It needs to change with how life is changing. And the young generation is going to do psychosynthesis in perhaps a very different way than we did. And I think it's important for us old folks to encourage them to break the rules and to go and work in the spirit of psychosynthesis, but maybe not the form that's known at any particular time. And it was a wonderful conference. And I tell you though, I felt old, really old. Yeah. Now, I was respected and people talk and so forth, but it's like that guy's a dinosaur. Like we're the future, and it's beautiful.
But what I was going to share, Tom, was just that, because we have young people in our program. They have no idea what psychosynthesis is. We don't teach them psychosynthesis. We be psychosynthesis with them. But recently, our young leaders board came to me and said, this stuff you've been doing with us, how you've trained yourself. We want some of that. will you run a training for us? And I agreed to, but only if it's youth-led. So we're going to co-design your training, and you're going to lead the way. And we're not going to use the word psychosynthesis. They don't know the word psychosynthesis. They never heard of it. But I found that really encouraging that they came to me and said, we want some of that. It's their words.
Beautiful.
Delightful.
So Eugene, thanks, Jamie. Eugene has said thank you for the opportunity to be here. And the question for the people who met Assagioli, so if the stories we live by lived in the time when Milton Erickson was popular in the US with his approach to hypnosis and psychotherapy, did he, I imagine did Assagioli ever discuss or express any ideas about Milton Erickson's approach that you know of? Andrea, you need to unmute. And I guess that's open for anyone who has any of
Well,
you.
I can answer, not to my knowledge. Assagioli, I must say, had some, although he had some pupils that were into hypnosis, he had some doubts about hypnosis because he felt he may interfere with freedom of the will. But that was the old conception of hypnosis. Hypnosis is a completely different thing now. It's very much aligned with the transpersonal, so it would be a different thing. Milton Erickson was particular. It's out of any rules because he had this incredible talent that can be studied, but I don't know how much it can be recreated. There are many things that we can learn from him, especially I like the book of anecdotes, of stories, of case histories. I am here with you, something like that, or I'm here for you. And I can see there and many analogies with the psychosynthesis in general, many analogies with how to lead a good session. But historically, there's nothing as far as I know.
Thank you. We've had a couple of questions about the body because in what we put out, we did say that, you know, how the importance of the body and how these things impact us. If you'd like to share a little bit about how central body is to psychosynthesis and its relevance to talking therapy.
Well, I would say, first of all, let's remember that it's not psychosynthesis, biopsychosynthesis, first of all. And Assagioli was a pioneer in the society, psychosomatic society in Italy. And of course, or at least with me in my meeting with him, he was not doing body work in the simple way we used to say. But for instance, when you see the students, the disciple, call as you like, of Assagioli, everybody's in a way developed something in a special part of psychosynthesis. For instance, Massimo Rosselli has worked all his life about body in psychosynthesis in many different ways. So that's absolutely relevant. And how can be in a different way? We are a body movement. We are in incarnation.
The thing I would say is related to what I said before is that it seems to me that over the 50 years, there's been a shift from, in a sense, a more cerebral way of working in psychosynthesis to more experiential experience. And Diana and I both trained in Gestalt as a basis for individual work where moment to moment, that's where you are with the body. There is also ancillary body work that's come in as a supportive therapy for the process. But to me, the process of psychosynthesis is rooted in the body, and you get closest to it by being in touch with it moment to moment as it unfolds. So in that sense, the body is the vehicle of the soul in the present moment.
I see it as soul infusion. You know, we talk about soul infusion, that our everyday life becomes a living embodiment of who we know ourselves deeply to be. And that's inclusive of the body. And enlightenment, as I think Swami Muktananda said, isn't incomplete until it reaches the soles of your feet. And I think Assagioli would agree with that in terms of the body. And it's very much determined by the practitioner, I think. Some of our practitioners of psychosynthesis are more working with the body than others, and we each have to find our own way with that practice. But embodiment is the key to what we do with people.
And I'm curious if you can connect the question of body to the theme of living with uncertainty. What kind of observations could you pull from your work at the moment or in recent times with living with uncertainty
Wow,
and connecting to the body?
Mm. Well, I could tell you something about this. One of the two or three primary ways in which the body is present in my work is breath. Not any kind of elaborate form of breathing exercise, just how we breathe and how spacious we are, because the breath is, of course, it's the interface of body and psyche. And sometimes I even count how many breaths a person, I say just as a game almost. Let's see how many times you breathe in a minute. Often people breathe 20, 25 times a minute, and that's very fast. The idea would be, of course, everybody's different, but the idea would be about 5 or 6 if we are calm, if we're centered. So in times of emergency and insecurity, we breathe faster. If I asked somebody to breathe deeper and slower, it's wonderful how their face changes. And it's also interesting, there's a lot of research on this, that breath work is one of the most effective work for anxiety. And there's a lot of anxiety. Anxiety is on the rise. So the two things have quite a relationship with it, between each other. That would be one question, one answer, and then there would be many others.
Then maybe we can move on to a next question by Caitlin McCarthy saying, I'd be interested to hear our elders discuss Assagioli's balance of opposites in relation to the polarization we are experiencing in the world today.
I think we'd all give different answers to that.
Well, I think of him saying never either or, always both and. That was his adage, and it seems, going back to what Diana was speaking about, our growing capacity to hold the whole, the darkness as well as the light and so forth, is that whatever synthesis is going to come out of the polarization on the planet now is going to need to include both. Not in the forms they are because they're distorted by the polarization, but the energies, the potential, is going to have to be manifested in some synthesis that will lead to what Roberto called the supreme synthesis. So I just think we have to hold the polarization, hold both poles, and work with that tension.
Well, that's the whole message of this evening. What we've been talking about together is embracing both, because when we embrace both, we have the opportunity to work positively with them, with what is. So it's not a denial, but it's an inclusive process that can lead to, I think, the opportunity to reframe the suffering and the chaos and the difficulties that we're going through.
And quite
a Nobel Prize recently came to Italy, a Nobel Prize in Literature, Edith Bruck, who had been herself a victim of the Holocaust. She's quite old. And she said, she asked the public, the Italian people, if they could make a march, a peace march with Palestinian flags and with Israeli flags. And they weren't able to do it because the poles have been too far apart. Diana is right. That's our whole work, to include and to understand the reasons of the other pole, to understand that there are no good guys versus the bad guys. But the good guys sometimes can be very nasty, and the bad guys have a soul too. But that's a very difficult task.
And it can be tricky, the situation, the thing of just to speak of a little episode. I was called by a radio from an Italian party, which is very right and very, even, let's say, sort of racist in some way, in some dimension. And they asked me to talk at the radio, and I did. And I, of course, presenting myself for what I am. And then they invited me again. And I was very interested in that. And I wrote, because some people criticize me, why do you speak with this party? And I said, I want to speak with everyone. being clear about my identity, but I want to speak to everyone, even with, and I mention it, a very rightist and even violent part of a post-fascist party, let's say. And I received critics from them, which I accepted a lot, it was like a sort of from I am so democratic that I speak even with you, no? And they were right. They were absolutely right. And so it's very interesting, this point. I don't know if it answers in some way to the question of balance of opposites, but it's a form to disidentify with the opposites and try to hold them. Being who you are, because I don't pretend that you, Tom, fall in love with your president. But
Here.
But if you were one of your clients and one of your patients, which would be your attitude?
Was that a pass to Tom, or
Was that a pass to me? Well,
I don't know.
You know, I was thinking just of another thing that I've done with people, which is interesting in terms of this, is a Gestalt technique, sort of adapted. But if the person is very identified and polarized, you put an empty chair next to you, and you invite the person to come over and sit in the chair and look back at themselves. And that is an incredibly powerful exercise because at that moment they transcend the polarization in themselves. And I've had some incredible experiences, including working with a very famous political activist who was involved with the Pentagon Papers. When he stepped back, he burst into tears. So that technique just came to me as a very simple way of working with the balance and the synthesis of opposites. And then obviously an integration came out of that.
Can I give an example of what you're talking about, Tom? Because Piero and I cooked this up a long time ago in self-realization groups we were running to put the soul of a person to imagine their soul on the empty chair in front of them, and then to let a dialogue develop between them and their soul. But we also did that with the pain, crisis, and failure. Put your crisis on the chair and have a dialogue with your crisis. But guess what? The outcome was always positive for the most part. I mean, not 100% of the time, but for the most part, both dialogues led to positive self-awareness and understanding. So to me, that's a perfect example of what you're speaking of.
Oh, it's powerful.
Well, sometimes, however, the soul was quite nasty and bossy.
Sometimes
I remember,
that's true.
and then the outcome was good, but not immediately.
It's a journey. It's a journey.
It's a journey.
That speaks a little bit to, there's such amazing questions. Thank you, everyone. And we'll send them out to all. But what you're talking to, Piero and Diana, might lead in a little bit to Josephine's question, which is on engaging in the world problems. Is it not enough to work on yourself and meet and change the world in that micro way? Is there a need and even a possibility to reach further? Big questions.
Very good question.
You know, what I would say is if you take yourself seriously and work on yourself, you will find a way to work on the world that's yours. So again, it's not either or. And I think I know many political activists who are a wreck as personalities, very reactive, disconnected, repressing feelings. They need therapy. And so somehow, again, it's not either or, it's both and. Find out who you are, and then you can work on the world from there.
I feel quite strongly about that question. No, it's not enough, in my opinion, because our interconnectedness can be lower when we're so absorbed in our own psychospiritual journey. And what I see in the young people we work with is this fundamental need to belong. And that means we all have to reach out to others and recognize and value. And I know Assagioli said that as we self-realize, we increasingly are concerned with our relationship to the larger whole. How do I live my life in relation to the larger whole? How do my choices, what consequences do they have on the larger whole? So I think, no, we can't just work on our own process. Sorry. That's just my opinion, by the way.
And it's
I
a
don't know if
starting
it's
place.
possible. I don't know if it's possible to just work on oneself, because we are enmeshed in a network of relationships, and it's inevitable to work on our relationships with other people. You cannot not do it, even if you wanted.
That's cool.
Eric, I think you've got a question that we're coming up to ending. So I think we've got one more question before.
Yes, I'm trying to find this question again. I'm thinking about a question about the role of forgiveness. In my experience, forgiveness is not it's not a uniquely psychosynthesis word, but what would the psychosynthesis twist of forgiveness be, and the role of forgiveness in the times we live in?
Well, for me, we come right back to darkness and light. To, if someone has hurt us or damaged us, to live that experience and deal with that transformatively in every way we can. To me, that leads to forgiveness. To work through one's suffering and one's pain is empowering us to be able to forgive. That's just my immediate take on it. I don't like the word forgiveness very much because it tends to generate this kind of, oh, I forgive you, I'm better than you, I'm bigger than you, and I can forgive you. That's not what we mean by that. To me, it's embracing the pain that the other has caused. Piero, Andrea, Tom?
Well, I wrote in my book on kindness, one of the 18 qualities of kindness was forgiveness. And when I went around to talking about my book, maybe I would forgiveness would come up. And when I spoke about forgiveness, I could feel the atmosphere in the room would get different, nervous, suspicious, irritated. And because forgiveness for many people is a dirty word. One reason is what you just said, Diana, that you it sounds like I
Yeah.
forgive you. And not only that, I think that many people are thinking that forgiveness is like condoning. Oh, what you did to me was not such a bad thing after all. So, but that's not what forgiveness is. It's letting go. I find that forgiveness is central to our work, but it may be better not to call it by that name. It is a form of letting go of the past, because we forgive for ourselves. First of all, we forgive in order not to be persecuted by the past. And I regard that as a superconscious quality. It's a wonderful feeling, the people who experience it. So it's basic, but that word really gets on many people's nerves, and we have to accept that. And there are reasons why.
I think it's very interesting, this point, and even could be very interesting for every one of us. Practicing forgiveness just inside, not making relational the forgiveness. I don't have to tell you that I'm no more angry or resentful with you, but just to work on yourself about that. It changes. It's metta, it's benevolence in the Vipassana tradition, You practice benevolence even for someone, first of all, to yourself, and then to someone you love, and neutral, and then to someone you have some difficulties, And it's an internal process. You don't go to tell the person, but it works. It works because it changes our attitude. So it changes the vibration in the relations as well, because it's unavoidable. We are connected. Interesting. As you have no sympathy for this word, Diana, I have no sympathy for compassion, for instance.
Okay.
For the same reason, compassion, I feel compassion for you, poor guy down there, and which is different in different cultures, different in the Buddhist culture in respect of the Christian culture, I would say. I must say, I have a problem with time, that I really have to conclude my participation, because maybe I was wrong on the schedule, but...
And
we
maybe
will
this
forgive
is...
you.
Yeah.
Andrea, the meeting closes in 6 minutes, and we're so grateful for you being here tonight. If you do need to leave, just sending you lots of love and appreciation.
And compassion, Andrea.
We forgive you, Andrea.
I feel so blessed by your...
By the way, we bless you too.
Oh, yes. A good bridge to bring in this evening into a close. So I suggest that all of us gather and direct our attentions towards ourselves again for a moment. Forget about the screen for just 1 minute. And go to yourself and see what is alive in you right now as this conversation is coming to an end. And maybe you can find what has moved in you, what is alive in you, what do you take from this? In any way you want to capture it. So first of all, do that for your own sake to see what you take from this conversation or what is or has been alive in you. And if you want to voice that and make that visible to us and to the world, you're also invited to post something in the chat as a checkout phrase, a word or a phrase, anything that you want to leave this meeting with, you can put in the chat if you'd like to. And coming back to the screen and coming back to each other, I would like to express my thank you to the four of you, Andrea, Piero, Diana, and Tom, and Kim. I'm also tempted to share one or two sentences about the conversation that we had in the breakout. While you were in the breakouts, this group had the conversation and they were really curious about wondering about what the next conversation in this series would be, whether if it's a different generation taking on the next conversation, or a mixture between generations. And some of the young people in their 60s, someone said. What you shared about the conference in the US, Tom, unfortunately I wasn't there, but it's great to hear that we have an influx of young people in the US. We see that in Sweden as well. So meeting across the globe and maybe next time meeting across generations, who knows?
Yes, please. Yes,
Thank you so much for
please.
tonight. Kim, anything you would like to add before we close?
No, I love what you said, and thanks for sharing that, Eric, because what my feeling, Tom, Piero, Andrea, and Diana, as you were speaking about what the next iteration was just about the humility that I see that you bring. So with all the experience that you have, I just think there's such a humbleness that I feel privileged to meet. So thank you. And I want to thank everyone who's here tonight for all of your great questions. And, for me, this is what psychosynthesis is great at, is. So for me, I'm left with a sense of community and connection, even though we haven't been able to share as openly as I would have liked the whole way through. So thank you for bearing with, and I wish you a good evening. Much appreciation.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Right.